Welcome to Reddit Revenge Stories. Did you know over 90% of people watch these videos but don't subscribe? If you enjoy stories of justice and payback, make sure to hit that subscribe button. It really helps the channel grow. And don't forget to like the video if you're ready for today's story. Let's get to the story. I always believed in simplicity. I was never one for grand gestures or loud proclamations. I came from a small town, raised by people who valued loyalty and hard work. That's the kind of life I thought I had built for myself. I married the woman I loved, started a small business, and lived each day with a quiet kind of contentment. Her name was Alina. We met in college. She was the type of person who would light up a room just by walking in. I remember the first time I saw her. She had this effortless laugh like the world couldn't touch her. Maybe that's what drew me in. I was grounded, realistic. She was a dreamer. I thought we balanced each other. Our first years together were good. We weren't rich, but we were comfortable. I ran a custom furniture workshop with 3 full-time employees and contracts that kept us busy year-round. She worked as a freelance designer and eventually started taking on clients of her own. We shared dreams, planned vacations we never took, and spent quiet nights in making dinner or watching movies. I never thought I'd become one of those stories, the man who didn't see it coming. But the truth is, the signs were always there. They were just quiet, like whispers behind a closed door. It started with small things, missed calls, late nights, a change in the way she looked at me, less softness, more distance. I'd ask her how her day went and get half-hearted answers. I'd walk into the room and her phone would go dark in her hand. At first I brushed it off. People change, work gets stressful. Maybe I was imagining it. Then came the business trips. Alina had never traveled for work before, but suddenly she had clients in other cities. First it was Islamabad, then Lahore, then Dubai. Always last minute, always just a few days. She'd come back with new clothes, different perfume, and a story that didn't quite match the photos she posted online. I remember one night in particular. She had flown in from a client meeting in Lahore. I made dinner, set the table, even bought her favorite wine. But she was distant, distracted. She picked at her food, smiled once or twice, then went to bed early. I stayed up, staring at her untouched plate. That's when something inside me shifted. I started paying attention. It's strange what you notice when you stop trusting someone. The way their lies feel practiced. The way their phone is always face down. The way they don't ask about your day anymore because they're too wrapped up in someone else's. I didn't confront her right away. I needed proof. I needed clarity. Not because I wanted to catch her. I just didn't want to be wrong. Part of me still hoped I was paranoid. So I started digging. I checked the call logs, found numbers I didn't recognize, created a dummy account and followed her burner Instagram profile she didn't know I knew about. That's where I saw the first picture. It was her in a restaurant, dressed like she was going to a wedding. Across the table, a man's hand holding hers, just the edge of his wristwatch and sleeve visible, but not mine. She hadn't posted it. It was on his page, which he quickly made private once I viewed it. But it was too late. I stared at that picture for what felt like hours. My stomach turned. Not because she cheated, because she had smiled in that photo the way she hadn't smiled with me in years. I still remember the day I decided to follow her. She said she had a weekend seminar in Karachi, packed a small suitcase, kissed me on the cheek, and left in an Uber. I waited 10 minutes, then got in my car. I had installed a small GPS tracker in her handbag a week prior. She didn't notice. I followed the tracker all the way to a private bungalow in DHA Phase 6. I parked a street away, watched her ring the bell, and get welcomed inside by a man I had never seen before. Tall, sharp-dressed, about my age. She wrapped her arms around him like she belonged there. I drove away without saying a word. When I got home, I poured myself a drink and sat in silence. I wasn't angry. Not yet. I was disappointed. In her. In myself. In the version of our life I had believed in. I didn't confront her when she came back. I acted normal, cooked dinner, asked her how the seminar went. She lied right to my face with that same gentle voice she used the night she told me she loved me for the first time. That night, I decided I wouldn't shout. I wouldn't beg. I wouldn't cry. I'd plan. People think revenge is about rage. It's not. It's about clarity. It's about patience. It's about hitting someone where it hurts, but doing it in such a way that they never see it coming. I started by separating our finances, quietly, discreetly. I moved money from our joint account into a separate one in my name. I sold my share in a business deal she didn't even know I was part of, set up a secondary workshop under a friend's name, funneled my best clients there. She thought I was working late. Really, I was making sure she wouldn't. Have a rupee to her name once I was done. Then I backed up everything. Messages, photos, emails, her burner profiles, the receipts from her trips because I had hired a private investigator by then. A good one who didn't ask questions. He followed her for 3 weeks, took hundreds of photos, and delivered a full report that detailed every meeting, every lie, every hotel. I read the report twice. Then I printed it and locked it in a drawer. Next, I talked to our families, not to expose her, just to prepare the ground. I started spending more time with her parents, helping them with errands, fixing things around their house. Her father was sick, and I paid for his treatment quietly. Her mother began to see me as the son they never had. Meanwhile, I started changing things at home. I removed all pictures of us from the living room, told her I was renovating. I moved her belongings into a spare closet, changed my passwords. Bit by bit, I erased our life without saying a word. She noticed, of course, asked questions. I told her I was just stressed. She believed me. She was too busy living her second life to question the cracks in her first one. And then, when everything was in place, I made my move. Here is Part 2 of the story, continuing the husband's clean and calculated revenge, told entirely from his perspective. The morning I decided to end everything, I woke up before sunrise. The house was quiet. I made tea, stood by the window, and watched the city slowly come alive. Alina was still asleep, curled up under the blanket like she didn't have a care in the world. I didn't feel nervous. I didn't feel angry. I felt calm, like a man who had finally finished a puzzle and was now admiring the last piece in his hand. The day before, I had received the final piece of evidence I needed, a phone recording between her and the man she was seeing. His name was Murad. Turns out he wasn't just a casual affair. He was someone she had been seeing for nearly a year. They had plans. Big ones. I heard her voice say, "Just a few more months and I'll leave him. We'll have everything then." Everything. She meant my business, my money, my life. I smiled when I heard it. You see, I hadn't just been preparing to leave her. I had been preparing to make sure she left with nothing. She thought she was manipulating me. She didn't realize she had been walking through a carefully built trap for the past 4 months. By 9 a.m., I was ready. I called my lawyer and gave the green light. The divorce papers were delivered to her inbox by noon, not by hand. I wanted her to see them in the most ordinary way possible. Sitting at her laptop, sipping her coffee, opening her email, and there it was. Subject: Legal notice for separation. At exactly 12:15 p.m., I walked into the house. She was sitting at the dining table, still staring at the screen, pale as if all the blood had drained from her body. "You did this?" she asked. I looked her in the eye. "Yes." She stood up, ready to scream, to cry, to perform whatever emotion she thought would change my mind. But I wasn't there for discussion. I handed her a file. "Everything is in here," I said. "Your messages, photos, locations, calls. This is what I'll present in court if you fight me for anything." She opened the file and flipped through the pages, her hands shaking. Each page a chapter in the secret life she thought I didn't know about. "You followed me?" she asked. "No," I said. "I hired someone smarter." The silence that followed was delicious. "I don't want to fight," she said eventually. I nodded. "Good, because you won't win." I had already prepared a deal. No alimony. No claim to my business. She could keep her car, her clothes, and her laptop. That's it. She had no savings. She had been spending my money like it was water. Her clients were mostly my referrals. Without me, she was starting from zero. She didn't sign right away, of course. Pride wouldn't let her. She left the house that night, probably went to Murad's. I didn't care. What mattered was that she was out. In the days that followed, I began cleaning the house like one erases a bad memory. I changed the locks, changed the paint, replaced the bed, burned the bed sheets. It felt like exorcising a ghost. Then I turned my attention to Murad. Not for violence, that's not my style. But I wanted him to feel the consequences too. He ran a small digital agency, not very big, but he had a few decent clients. One of them was a company I had a connection with, an old friend who owed me a favor. I sent him a package anonymously, photos, audio, text transcripts. Murad lost that contract within 48 hours. Next, I had a polite conversation with his landlord, purely informational. Did he know his tenant was operating an unregistered business from his property? That he was using it to host married women? No threats, just facts. Murad was evicted within 2 weeks. I even paid a visit to his office once from AmITheA day, dressed sharp, polite smile. I didn't say much, just looked him in the eye and said, "You took something from me." "I'm just taking back the interest." He didn't speak, just stared. Maybe he expected me to hit him. But men like me don't throw punches. We take away comfort. We take away peace. Slowly and permanently. Alina came back once. Just once. It was a Sunday. I was at the shop, sanding down a table. She stood at the door wearing sunglasses to hide how broken she looked. "I didn't think you were capable of this," she said. I looked up, wiped my hands, and said, "That was your first mistake." She asked if we could talk. I said no. She asked if we could at least have closure. I said, "You had that. The moment you decided to lie to me every day." She looked like she wanted to cry. I didn't stop her. I let her stand there, surrounded by the sawdust and scent of real work. Something she'd never understood. Then I turned back to my table and continued sanding. She left without another word. That night, I had dinner alone. No sadness, no anger, just peace. But there was still one last piece of revenge left to fulfill. I hadn't told anyone the full story, not yet. People knew we separated. Her parents knew we were going through divorce. But no one knew why. She had kept up the illusion that it was a mutual thing, creative differences, growing apart. She even told some people I had lost interest in the marriage. So I decided to give her the gift of truth. Not in a cruel way, not out of spite, but with calm precision. I composed a message, factual, simple. I shared it with her parents, a few mutual friends, and her closest cousin. Attached were 2 documents, one from the investigator, one from the lawyer. No opinions, no insults, just the truth. She was exposed, quietly, permanently. She moved out of the city a month later. I don't know where to, I don't care. As for me, I built a new life. Quietly, stronger. But this story isn't quite over. Because I still had one more gift for her. And I gave it to her on the anniversary of the day we met. The anniversary of the day we met was always special to her. Alina used to treat it like a personal holiday. She'd wear that blue dress she knew I liked, book a table at some quiet rooftop restaurant, and pretend for one night that we were still the perfect couple she liked to show the world. So I chose that day to give her the final gift. Not out of bitterness, but because it felt poetic. It had been 7 months since the divorce was finalized. I had moved into a new apartment, cleaner, quieter, more me. Business was booming. I had taken on 3 major clients and even hired 2 more craftsmen to handle the orders. I worked with my hands every day, building furniture with purpose. There was no trace of her in my space, my mind, or my future, except for one last plan. You see, Alina had one weakness even stronger than her ego, her need to be admired. She couldn't bear being forgotten. That's why she was still posting online like nothing had happened. Filtered smiles, captions about healing and growth, pretending like she had risen from ashes she lit herself. So I made sure the truth followed her wherever she went. Remember that report I had from the investigator? I packaged it again, only this time for a different audience. Her new city, her new social circle, her new clients. Carefully, strategically, I sent anonymous dossiers to 3 agencies she was trying to freelance for. I didn't write a single lie, just forwarded screenshots of conversations, photos of her with Murad during business trips she had claimed were professional, and the timeline that made it clear she had committed personal and professional fraud. One agency wrote back to me, thanking me for the warning. I knew then that the message had landed. But that wasn't the real gift. The real gift was the email I scheduled to be sent to her on the anniversary morning. It wasn't cruel. In fact, it was handwritten in tone, sincere, honest. I said, "Alina, today marks 8 years since we met. I remember it well. I remember the way you laughed and how it made me believe in something bigger than myself. I remember the way you looked at me like I was enough. I don't know when that changed for you. Maybe it was slow. Maybe it happened all at once. But you stopped looking at me that way. And I kept trying to be the man you once loved, not realizing you had already chosen to become someone else. You didn't just betray a marriage. You betrayed a friend, a teammate, a man who would have walked through fire for you. But I'm not angry anymore. You gave me a gift I didn't expect. You taught me the power of self-respect. You taught me how far I was willing to go for someone who didn't deserve it. And now I'm free. I hope one day you become the version of yourself you pretended to be. Until then, remember that truth has a longer shadow than lies. A man you used to know. No threats, no insults. Just a mirror. She didn't reply, but I knew she read it, because 2 days later she deleted her social media accounts. I heard from a mutual acquaintance that she moved again, this time to a smaller city. Murad was no longer in the picture. Apparently, he had ghosted her. Maybe because his own life had collapsed under the weight of their deception. Maybe because men like him don't stick around once the fantasy fades. Whatever the case, she was alone. And I was free. But the most important part of my revenge wasn't her downfall. It was my rise. I took that pain and turned it into momentum. I rebuilt myself piece by piece. Learned to cook, learned to play the guitar, started reading again. I met people not to fill a void, but to expand who I was. I didn't rush into another relationship. I didn't need to. I was learning to enjoy my own company for the first time in years. And for all the chaos she brought into my life, I'll say this much. I'm better because I survived her. I share this story now, not for pity, not even for praise, but because someone out there is sitting in silence right now, wondering if they're crazy for feeling the distance, wondering if the gut instinct is wrong, wondering if the person they love is still worth fighting for. Here's my advice. Trust your silence, because silence tells the truth louder than words ever could. Revenge isn't about destroying someone. It's about rebuilding yourself so powerfully that they no longer exist in the world you've created. That was my victory, and I didn't need to scream. I didn't need to strike. I just needed to walk away and leave the door to her illusion wide open, so the truth could blow right in. And it did. So if you're still listening to this story, know this. You can burn quietly. You can rise slowly. You can walk away with your dignity intact and still leave behind an echo so loud they'll hear it every time they're alone with themselves. I did, and I never looked back.